and then it came together as Right Now Leadership. And what's meant by that is twofold. One is, now is the opportunity to lead. Right now, as you're having a conversation with someone, as you're interacting with your employees, as you're interacting with your kids, as you're interacting with your friends, now is the opportunity to lead, to make a difference, to make an impact, right? So that's part of what the right now is as well. Right now also is, leadership is shifting, or at least it should for people. And what I mean by that is, a lot of leaders are recognizing that the people are their most important asset. On your statement, on your financial statements, they're a liability, but in reality, they're your most important asset. And so right now, leaders recognize that, and they lean into their people more and more, and they trust their people more and more. And when they do that, their business is more successful, not just financially, but on a cultural level, on a turnover level, on a just a satisfaction level for everybody that's involved in the organization. So right now is the opportunity to lead and take advantage of the mindsets and habits I talk about in there. And right now is the opportunity to shift the way that you lead your people.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about increasing our leadership skills. I am delighted to welcome Kyle Gillette. Kyle is a leadership and business coach, behavioral analyst, the creator of the SAGE Mindset Leadership Framework, and the author of Right Now Leadership, a 4-part framework for today's leader. You can reach Kyle at his website, gillettesolutions.com, and I'll include a link in the show notes. Welcome, Kyle. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Hey, Linda, thank you for having me. Just a heads up, my website's now blueshirtcoaching.com.
Oh, thank you for the correction. That makes a big difference. So I need to include the correct link to the new website. So I appreciate that. Well, Kyle, it's been about a year since you and I had a conversation. And so I'm delighted to welcome you back. And last time we talked about time management, which is so important for everybody. But today we're going to be talking about some different aspects of leadership. And the title of your new book is about now. So I'm kind of curious, the using of that word, leadership, is it evolving? Is it changing? Is being a leader now, does that mean something different than maybe it did 5 years ago or a decade ago? What do we need to know that makes it applicable to now?
Yeah, exactly. And that word is in there intentionally. My publisher and I debated the title, and I kind of stumbled on that in the middle of the conversation and said, leaders need to change right now, or right now is da da da. And then it came together as Right Now Leadership. And what's meant by that is twofold. One is, now is the opportunity to lead. Right now, as you're having a conversation with someone, as you're interacting with your employees, as you're interacting with your kids, as you're interacting with your friends, now is the opportunity to lead, to make a difference, to make an impact, right? So that's part of what the right now is as well. Right now also is, leadership is shifting, or at least it should for people. And what I mean by that is, a lot of leaders are recognizing that the people are their most important asset. On your statement, on your financial statements, they're a liability, but in reality, they're your most important asset. And so right now, leaders recognize that, and they lean into their people more and more, and they trust their people more and more. And when they do that, their business is more successful, not just financially, but on a cultural level, on a turnover level, on a just a satisfaction level for everybody that's involved in the organization. So right now is the opportunity to lead and take advantage of the mindsets and habits I talk about in there. And right now is the opportunity to shift the way that you lead your people. That's the intention behind the title and the book.
I love that. And I am delighted that this is something that is gaining momentum. And I've been privileged to speak to other people who are also helping with this idea that it is our people that make a difference. And you know, as an employee, that makes all the difference in the world when I know that someone cares about me, that I'm not just a number. And when you said that I'm a liability, oh, that hurts. That hurts.
Yep.
So to shift that from, no, I am not a liability, I am an asset. I'm the reason why this company is successful, or one of the reasons why this company is successful. I just see that as a win-win type scenario. So, as a leader trying to implement this idea and say, okay, my people matter. What, how do I make that change? How do I say, you know, give me some nuts and bolts? How do I do it? I like the
Sure.
idea. So now how do I do it?
Yeah, for sure. So the concept is a four-part framework, really, is the concept of the way that I coach my clients and what I walk through in the book as well. But I'm going to talk to you about the fourth part. I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview of the first three and then talk to you about the fourth part, because that'll answer the question. So Blue Shirt Coaching is the name of my business, and Blue is an acronym that stands for four things. The B is be a self-aware leader. And so in leadership, self-awareness is the foundation. So if you picture a leadership house, picture whatever house you want to picture, just a normal white picket fence type house. The foundation of that, you have to have a foundation for that house. Otherwise, it's just going to start leaning into and sinking into the soil, right? So you have that foundation, and that creates something that you can build on. Well, that's what self-awareness is in leadership. We need to have that foundation. Then the L is lead with accountability. So accountability is the nails that holds that leadership house together. Without the accountability, your leadership house is going to fall apart. No matter how beautiful the architecture is, no matter how beautiful it looks like on the outside, it's going to fall apart. It's going to hurt you, and more importantly, really, it's going to hurt other people in the process that you're leading. So then the U is use a growth mindset, and in the metaphor, the growth mindset is the walls and the roof. And so this is where, if you've ever lived in a home for an extended period of time, at some point you replace the carpet, you repaint the walls, you move furniture around. And then also some people add additions to their homes, right? Their home grows. It's the same thing with leadership. Our leadership grows, which means other people can come under that roof and be influenced by us, whether they're guests, friends, or whatever. They are being influenced by us by being under our roof. Same thing in leadership. People come underneath our leadership, and we get to have the opportunity to influence them and help them grow as we grow. And then finally, you have empowerment. So empower others is the E in Blue. And that's the idea of the windows and doors of the house. So this is where people see into your leadership and they go, wow, that person, those people are really making a difference in the community, in the world, in the customers that they're serving. And so you're observed. And then some people actually want to come underneath that influence. Sometimes it's through employment, sometimes it's as a customer. But either way, they want to be influenced by your leadership. And then the door is there, so obviously they can walk in, but it's also there so those that you're empowering, truly empowering, they're walking out the door because you've empowered them so much that they want to go and do their own thing. And to me, not everybody's going to do that, of course, that you're leading, but to me, that's the greatest mark of an excellent, phenomenal leader, because they've empowered the people around them so much that they go and lead their own teams and influence people in their own ways. And it's not necessarily under your roof anymore. And so that's the framework. To answer your question, do you have a question just before I jump into?
I do. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about this last part where you suggested that a mark of a good leader is to be able to empower people so that they don't need you anymore and they can leave. So is that a little bit like shooting yourself in the foot, or is this how is this a win-win and not just I just lost because my awesome person that I've been working with just decided to move elsewhere?
Yeah, so there's going to be obviously a loyalty from that person to you. So very likely as they step into their own things, it's likely to not be exactly what you're doing. They're probably not going to be competing with you. And so they'll be able to refer to you and network with you and build up your network. And meanwhile, because you've done such a good job leading these other people want to be underneath you that haven't had that type of leadership. And so that person that steps away, and there's not a lot of people that are going to do it, but those that do, they're going to be attracting other people back to you because they saw what it was like to be underneath your leadership.
Okay.
Right?
Wow. All right. So I can just imagine the same scenario where you have your company and you have someone leave and you are horrible to them and they hate your guts and they can't wait to destroy you and take over all their business. And that would be a bad thing. So thinking of it as, man, we had such a great rapport. We work together so well. They trust me. They know that I am trustworthy. They know that I build people up. They know. And so now rather than being under my roof, they're my neighbor, and we're able to I love that networking. So now they are a
Yep.
strength and kind of a pillar, not necessarily to your house, but so okay, I could see that going either
Yep.
way. But if you had the right background, that right environment where you can continue to build each other up, you're actually empowering someone to help you even more so, just
Yeah.
in a different capacity. Okay.
An example in my career is I worked for an organization for 10 years as a nonprofit. And when I left to move to the Pacific Northwest, I helped them replace me. And the person that replaced me is still there 9 years later. Right. So that's a huge deal. And when I left my HR job just before I started my business, the person I helped them replace me there too. As I walked out the door, another guy by the name of Kyle actually went into the organization, and he's still there as well. So me walking out the door gave them people that had longer longevity than I even did in the organizations that I left. Right. So that's an example of how their leadership inspired me to make sure that I would help them replace them. But to answer your question from earlier, the practical nuts and bolts of empowering someone that stays within your organization, there's 5 pieces to it, or 5 levels to it. And the first one is you start with fascination. And what I mean by that is, Linda, are you a moviegoer or a TV show watcher? Okay. So do you have a favorite show or movie recently that you watched?
Gosh, there haven't been a lot of good ones out lately. My way of thinking, let me think. Let's go old school. How about a movie that pops into mind is Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Oh man, I'm totally on board with you on Lord of the Rings. So did you watch it in the theaters by any chance?
I did.
Okay. So I think it was the second episode or the second in the series that was the one that really got me. But anyway, when you were in the theaters and watching the movie, I'm sure that you were at the edge of your seat and you were riveted. Your all your senses were tuned into that movie. You were fully engaged. You were excited about everything that was going on. Your emotions were engaged, and you just riveted and fascinated by what was going on in the story of the movie. Well, when it comes to empowering people, we want to make an assumption. And that assumption is that those that we lead are fascinating. They're fascinating. And to start with that assumption, like you're riveted by a movie, leaning in and just fully engaged with that movie would be the same that we need to be with the people that we get to lead. We have the opportunity to lead them, because everybody's story really truly is fascinating when you get to know them, right? When you dive in with them and you know their story, it really is fascinating. The way they think is fascinating. Who they are, their character, all that can be truly fascinating if you start with the assumption that they are. If you start with the assumption that they're just an employee that needs to get stuff done for you and you have to pay them, they're not going to be fascinating. It's going to be difficult to empower them, right? So that's step one. Assume that everybody that works with you and for you is absolutely fascinating. They're worth putting the effort in to know more. Step two is to actually get to know them more, which is to study them. And how do you do that? Well, you pay attention, right? You watch how they get their work done. You look at the way they communicate. You pay attention to their body language, their tone of voice. What are their strengths? What are their limitations? And there's tools to help you learn this through assessments. And then there's obviously just things you can do in terms of studying body language, or just plain out paying attention to the people that work for you and you interact with. So you study them. And once you study them, now you're able to ask them questions that really fit them, right? So you're fascinated by them. So your unconscious mind is already going, wow, this person is really interesting. What can I ask them that's interesting? And then you get to know them more practically with the nuts and bolts of their emotions and their stories. And then the questions that you ask them to help them solve problems in the organization are much more pertinent to their personality, which means you're going to help them think more clearly. And ultimately, to really empower someone, we want to empower their thinking, right? We're not just delegating tasks. We want to help to delegate powerful questions to them that they can answer and come up with solutions on their own, because that's actual empowerment, right? If we just give someone something to do, a lot of things a robot can do that in, right? Or AI can do that. But when you require a human to actually think for themselves, that's beautiful empowerment, and that's what keeps a culture moving. Once you've done that, now you know who they are. You're really fascinated by them. You ask them powerful questions. They come up with great solutions, and you can assign them hard work. You can assign them challenging things that you can let go of yourself, which is really helpful for you. And then you go to holding them accountable, right? So the fourth layer of empowerment is we have to hold people accountable for the things that we give to them, the assignments that we have for them. And that's a whole nother layer of a different conversation, what that looks like. But that's the fourth step. And then finally, the fifth is celebrate. Celebrate your people. If you really want to empower them, celebrate them in the little things. I'm coaching my daughter's 6th through 8th grade soccer team. And at the game, we play 2 games every Saturday. And so in the middle of the game and at the end of the game, every single girl on the team, I'm figuring out one very specific thing in that moment that I want us to celebrate that they did well, right? So they come off the field and like, you did a really good job keeping the ball on your foot as you dribbled down the sideline. And I'm telling one person on the team that specifically because that's what she did really well. And this is a way to celebrate your employees, is paying attention to those specifics. And since you're already studying them and you're already fascinated by them and you've asked them really good questions, the things you can celebrate are going to be easy to figure out.
Wow. Okay. This is so beautiful. So as we're going through this 5 steps, and the first thing includes my intent, like we are my assumptions. So we're having a conversation, and say we just met for the very first time. And so I am going to come, we come with assumptions about what I expect this conversation, what I expect to get out of meeting with you, of talking with you. And if I come with that initial expectation and my initial assumption is this is going to be good, it's going to be very good, because I've already done enough background that I know that you're fascinating. And I imagine when we're hiring an employee, we've already done enough background check to say, you are somebody that I want here. So we've got really a baseline. And then from there, we really should have enough to come up with the assumption, that expectation that this is going to be good. And isn't it amazing how frequently our expectations are met?
Yep.
And we come in with the expectation of, well, I got a bunch of lame sauce employees who don't show up on time and they do the absolute minimum that they possibly can because they're lazy and they're blah, blah, blah. And when we come in with that, I think we attract that. And I think we get that kind of a response. And that is something, quite frankly, I had not even considered before you brought it up, is that let's start even before the first word is spoken with my mindset of this is going to be good. And it's going to be good because I value you and I know that you're going to bring good things out. And then on the receiving end, when I feel like, oh my gosh, Kyle, he believes in me. He knows that I can do great things, and he knows, and he's counting on me to do these things. So I don't want to let him down. I really appreciate the way that this interaction is going. And so I want to step up to the plate and I want to perform. And so you have created, if this is done successfully, kind of an undercurrent that's beneath anything that we're actually seeing, that is going to create success on multiple levels, on our interaction, the way that we work together, on the kind of quality that we're going to produce together as a team. That is amazing. And I loved, as you're going through these different steps, that you brought in AI. And here, this is something that is changing as we're talking about what do we need for today. We need to be so that we're not instantly replaceable by something else. What do I, as a human being, have to contribute that a computer can't, so that we can work with our computer and have that be awesome rather than feeling like I just got replaced? So that was fabulous. And then I also loved how you brought in soccer, that this is not just in business, this is everywhere. These are the types of things that we can use to improve the teamwork and in everything, so that we are we're happier. We're happy as we're doing it. And then you are so careful and particular in paying attention. What is the role of a leader? It's someone with their eyes wide open,
Hmm.
looking for positive things and solutions and how to make things better. And I appreciate that because I know there have been different work situations where the environment is, okay, everybody, your job is to nitpick each other and tell on your neighbor, and let's make sure we get all of the negatives. And the idea is that way we make the corrections, but what it really does is it makes a bunch of bickering and backbiting, and nobody likes to be there. So looking for those specific positive things, because I am paying attention. I'm paying attention to the way that you dribble the ball. I am paying attention to the positive things that you do. I love it. I love it. So if you've created this, and we're talking about you've made a whole a framework using this analogy of a home and different aspects of the home. And here, this is empowerment, but it also feels to me like it's below the foundation. It's your bedrock. It's something that maybe I can't see, but it infuses everything.
Yeah, I would say in the book I talk about how rebar reinforces concrete, and rebar is what creates the tension in the concrete so that it doesn't crumble, right? And I can't, to be honest, I can't exactly remember what I equate that to directly in the book, but I think it's like trials and struggles and stuff like that that help us to reinforce that foundation of self-awareness. Underneath all of that, if you get below all of that, the real thing here is your own mindset about the people that you're leading, about yourself, and that your thinking, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you think about others, is going to impact everything else. Our brains can handle, I think it's 1 million bits of information a second. That's what our unconscious mind takes in, but our conscious mind only takes in, I think it's 166 bits of information. That's all that our conscious mind can take in. But we get to direct what those bits of information are that we pay attention to, right? So if I decide in the morning that I want to be more self-aware today, then I tell myself, okay, I need to focus on how am I behaving? What's going on with me? And that's the bits of information that my unconscious mind is going to bring to me because I told it what to do. Same thing with empowering other people. I'm gonna pay attention to my client and say, okay, with Gabriel, I want to focus on what she's doing really well as a leader. And as I'm coaching her, those things are going to pop out, even in the nuances of like a situation that's really crappy for her, where she may have even screwed up big time. Right? I'm still going to be able to catch those things that were going well that I can appreciate her for or celebrate within her. Right. So it's setting your intent, like you said earlier, setting our intention, but that's empowerment is starting with me and my mindset. And then it goes into the actions that I take and the words that I used. But you have to start with your mindset. Otherwise, you're hamstringing yourself and other people in the process.
Leadership is about the leader
Mm-hmm.
becoming that that person who can inspire, that person who has that skill set. And so that means that as a leader, and again, I'm going to bring back your soccer thing. We have leadership roles in business. We have leadership roles in our community. We have leadership roles even within our families. There are lots of opportunities to lead, and in every one, it begins with us. It's not how can I force these people to do what I want? How can I force them to think the way that I expect? How can I force them to produce and do more? It starts with me, and that's what creates a good leader. That's what makes the difference. Now, I really appreciate you were talking about looking for the positives, and the example you gave is in this person who maybe screwed up. So one of the aspects is accountability, and we're talking about creating this positive expectation, this positive environment, but we also have accountability. So can you give us some examples of how you would, someone comes and they messed up, that you would hold them accountable and still not destroy this relationship or crush them?
Yeah, so there's two sides to the coin of accountability, because there's self-accountability, which is, truly on me and on you. And then there's the accountability that's to the team. And I can't hold anybody accountable in all reality. I know that's language that is used, but they are the only ones that can keep themselves accountable, right? I can give them a system or a process to help them stay accountable, but I can't hold them accountable. And I say that word sometimes when I don't really mean it, because I know that that doesn't make sense. You really can't hold somebody, but you can help them to be. So if we're talking about others, one of the first things we have to do is get rid of our assumptions. So back to assumptions, right? The first thing we need to do is assume that this person has good intent. And however they screwed up, we need to assume that they have good intent. So start in our heads with the right story that, okay, Susie messed up when she was having the conversation with the client, and we lost the client because we lost a $50,000 client because Susie messed up, and the client's really mad at her. Okay, so that's the scenario, and it's like, I need to get in my head and go, okay, I know Susie is a good employee. I know that she has intent to win this project for us. There's no way that she would lose it on purpose. So something went wrong here. And then I go in with the assumption that she had good intent, and that changes my bias about the situation. Second, and kind of concurrently, I find out the facts. Like I get the facts, not the opinions or the perspectives, but the facts. What exactly happened in that situation? What was said, what was offered, what was denied, what was requested, whatever. The very specifics of the situation that are undeniable. You get the facts. Since now you have your head in the right spot about the story, and you have the facts in your hands, you can then go to the person that needs some accountability and say, hey, Susan, I found out that ABC happened when you were interacting with this client. And as a result, we lost this client. Can you tell me about how this happened? Right. And so the person can't deny the facts. You're not accusing them of really anything, because all you're sharing is the facts about what happened. And then she can share back with you what happened. And then you follow up with the powerful questions, because you've studied this person and you know them well. Then you ask them the powerful question of, they share with you what happened. You say, okay, so what can we do differently next time? Or what would you do different if this were to happen again? Or how can we get this client back? Or whatever question makes sense in the context, right? But the keys are get the story right and get the facts. And then you can come to the table with the questions that actually make sense, that aren't necessarily accusatory, but they're empowering instead.
So once again, it's starting with the leader putting themselves in the proper mindset so that they can be objective rather than reactive, and be able to handle it. So let's say in this case, as I'm talking with Susie, and it could go multiple ways. It could be, wow, I can see where I went wrong, and next time I'm going to nail it. Or it could be, you know what, Susie, I've looked at your skill set, and it maybe you would be a better fit over here, and maybe we can bring in, Jill or whoever to handle this particular aspect, because their skill set matches the job requirements. So I can see that it could be an opportunity to learn and grow. And it can also be an opportunity to say, that the skills required for this particular job are not a good fit. So that can happen.
Yeah. So Linda, that's brilliant, because that's the next steps of the process. So as you're having the conversation with the person, we've established our story. We know the facts. We've asked them a question and draw out what they saw that happened. We kind of employ them to come up with the answers. But then in the process, we're testing for skills. Did they actually have the skills to do this? And if they don't, that's my fault. Mm-hmm. So I got to resolve that. Is it a motivation problem? Well, if it is, then that's a dual assignment. Like, how can I help them be motivated, and how can they be motivated themselves? Right. And then is it bad communication? Right. So where does it land, or is it a combination? Whatever. as you figure out the answers to those questions, then what that does, which is beautiful, is you can then pay that forward into the next situation that's similar to it, right? To prevent. So if it's a skills problem, then we make sure we fix our skills training, right? If it's a motivation problem, then we make sure to figure out how do we motivate our team so this doesn't happen again. If it's a communication problem, well, that's obvious, right? And then the last step is really follow up, right? Here's the assignment. Here's what's expected of this person. And because we've had the accountability conversation and we're going to meet again in a week, and I have this expectation that you're going to deliver, you're going to have had the conversation with that client. You're going to apologize to them. You're going to rectify it in some way, shape, or form, or whatever makes sense for the situation. But the key is that the leader follows up with that person, and the person takes action on it. And whatever the follow-up time is, roughly a week, for instance, then the whole accountability process can land. And if you miss any of those steps, it's not going to land. It's just not. It's gonna fall apart at one of those points. Whichever point is missing, that's where it's going to fall apart.
Wow. Okay. So gaining this skill set, it feels like you mentioned, we talked about earlier that leadership is evolving, the expectations are evolving. And in order to create an environment where we value our people, we need these skill sets to be able to work with people who come with their strengths and their weaknesses. And we are not always logical. We are not always rational. We are not always in that good spot. So to be able to hold and maintain that good spot it sounds like going to be the real focus of what we need to become until it becomes second nature and becomes easy.
Yep.
But I imagine that learning curve is going to take some effort.
Yeah. And that's why the foundation is self-awareness, right? Because that allows you to know where you are in that process of making it easier and easier to empower others, to help others grow, all those, and hold others accountable, right? And if you're not paying attention to the process that you're going through and you're growing in there, it's going to be harder for that process to continue. If you think about, like, on teams, when they know the score, there's a different motivation than when you don't. If you're just playing pickup, whatever sport, and you don't know the score, you're just kicking around, you're having fun. But if someone starts saying, hey, I think the score is 4-5 and we got 10 minutes left to play, all of a sudden the game picks up. And so when you're aware of yourself and how you're performing personally, and there's all kinds of things I could talk about to be aware of yourself and how you're performing, all of a sudden your game changes and your intentionality and your effort shifts significantly. But we have to have a scoreboard. We have to have a box score, if you will, to know where we stand. And then that up levels our game. And most people don't have that box score for themselves, right? And most organizations don't have that scorecard or box score for each of their employees. And that piece of the pie will help everyone progress faster than ever possible, right? Without that, you're not going to progress in the same pace.
That's excellent. And you said you had several things that you can help me to evaluate. So can I have one example? How do I know where I'm at?
Yeah. So I have a dashboard on my right screen. It's not up right now because I don't want to be distracted, but I touch on 7 different areas of myself and my business that I'm wanting to track. And so I track it based on the number of minutes or hours in a given week that I spend in those areas. Right. And so at the end of the week, I'm looking at my calendar and going, how much time did I spend in each of these areas? And I'm supposed to spend 10 hours of coaching each week. And I'm supposed to spend 5 hours of networking each week and 3 hours on education each week, et cetera. And then I enter the numbers in, and then it gives me a percentage of how I'm doing. And I want to break 80% in each of those categories every single week. If I do, my scorecard says I had a great week. If I don't, at the end of my week on Saturday, so I do my scorecard on Friday, and then on Saturday I reflect on what I need to shift with a 4 or 5 question process that I go through, right? So that gives me even more self-awareness and creates action to move forward on the scores that I saw for the previous week, right? And some people, you can put in whatever you want in there. Maybe it's a relational thing. You have a relational category and you want to spend a certain amount of time with friends or family. Maybe you have a financial category and you want to be studying your finances or putting effort towards decreasing debt, or it doesn't matter. It's whatever fits the person, and you're putting time and effort towards it and tracking that time and effort. And that creates an awareness for yourself that continually moves you forward.
So I say that this is my priority, and then you're holding yourself accountable and saying, okay, if that is a priority to me, did I spend my time there? Did I spend my effort there? And if I didn't, then maybe that's not really my priority, or maybe I need to readjust where I'm putting my time and my effort. And that's kind of beautiful that that comes back to time, because that's something that we talked about earlier. So beautiful. Well, Kyle, this has been delightful. Is there anything else you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Yeah, a lot of what I shared with your audience today has been from my book, Right Now Leadership. And so I just want to encourage people, if they're interested in learning more, they can go to my website, go to blueshirtcoaching.com/book. The book is on sale right now. You can order ahead of time. And I'm giving away the ebook for free. Once you purchase the regular book, you get the ebook, and would love for people to check that out.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Warren Bennis. He said, "Leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality." Today, I invite our listeners to increase our skills to become better leaders. See you next time on Linda's Corner.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Linda's Corner, please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. I also invite you to check out my nonprofit, Hope for Healing, at the website hopeforhealingfoundation.org. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, or Amazon bestseller, You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.